You believe that you need people, that you need their approval and validation. You need their presence to feel complete, and that need is destroying you. It is making you weak, dependent. It is making you a prisoner of other people's opinions, moods, and availability. But here is the truth that no one wants to tell you. The most powerful position you can occupy in this life is not to be loved by everyone, is not to be surrounded by people, is not to be needed. The most powerful position is not to depend on anyone, not to hate people, not to avoid people, simply not to need them to feel complete. And that's what this audiobook will teach you. How to walk alone, how to move silently, how to become completely, totally, and unshakably unstoppable. Chapter 1. The Prison of Needing Others. You are in prison right now. You do not see the bars. You do not feel the chains, but they are there, wrapped around every decision you make, wrapped around every word you speak, wrapped around every dream you have abandoned because someone might not approve. The prison is invisible. The prison is comfortable. The prison feels like normal life, but it is still a prison. And the walls of that prison are built from one single material: your need for other people. Here is what you need to understand. The moment you need someone, you give them power over you. Not a little power, complete power. The power to control your emotions. The power to influence your decisions. The power to determine your self-worth. Your need is their leverage. And most people hand over that leverage without even realizing they're doing it. They hand it over to parents, to partners, to employers, to friends, to strangers on the internet, to anyone whose opinion they have decided matters more than their own. That is the key. You have made other people the authority on your life, not because they earned it, not because they deserve it, because you need them. You need their approval. You need their validation. You need their acceptance. And that need has made you a prisoner in a cell you built with your own hands. Think about your life right now. Think about the decisions you make daily. How many of those decisions are truly yours? How many are shaped by what others might think? How many are filtered through the question of whether someone will approve? If you are honest, the answer is most of them. Most of your decisions are not decisions at all. They are negotiations with the invisible committee of people whose opinions you have decided matter. You have a choice. You can continue living as a prisoner, or you can recognize the prison for what it is and start dismantling it. But you cannot dismantle what you refuse to see. And most people refuse to see their prison because seeing it requires admitting an uncomfortable truth. The truth that their need for others has made them weak, controllable, small. Here is the real-world cost of this dependency. It is not abstract. It is not theoretical. It is showing up in your life right now, in specific, concrete, measurable ways. You stay in relationships that are destroying you, not because you love the person, because the thought of being alone feels worse than the reality of being mistreated. Your need for companionship, your need to avoid solitude, your need to have someone there, keeps you trapped with people who do not deserve your presence. Your need is their leverage, and they use it. Consciously or unconsciously, they use it because they know you will not leave. They know your need is stronger than your self-respect. You accept jobs beneath your potential, not because you lack ability, because you fear disappointing family expectations, because you need approval from people who have never lived your life. Your parents wanted you to be a doctor, or a lawyer, or whatever they decided would make them proud, and you abandoned your own vision to satisfy their need. Except it was not their need. It was yours. Your need for their approval. You need to be the good child. You need to avoid the discomfort of their disappointment. That need shrunk your life to fit their expectations. You silence your true opinions to maintain social harmony. You agree when you disagree. You smile when you are angry. You pretend to be someone you are not because the real you might not be accepted. And every time you do this, you vote for the prison. Every time you choose approval over authenticity, you add another bar to your cell. You make the prison stronger. You make yourself weaker. That is the key. Your need for others is not just uncomfortable. It is actively shrinking your life. It is making you smaller, less authentic, less powerful, less free. Every day you spend in the prison of needing others is a day you are not living your actual life. You are living a performance designed to keep people happy. And the people you're trying to keep happy rarely notice, rarely appreciate it, rarely reciprocate. It is not about hating people. It is not about becoming cold. It is about recognizing the difference between wanting connection and needing approval. Wanting connection is healthy. Needing approval is prison. Wanting relationships is natural. Needing validation to feel worthy is slavery. The distinction matters, because one leads to freedom and the other leads to chains. Here is what independence actually means. Independence does not mean isolation. Independence does not mean pushing everyone away. Independence does not mean becoming a hermit who hates humanity. Independence means emotional armor. It means having connections without having dependencies. It means enjoying people without requiring them. It means your peace, your confidence, your sense of self-worth does not depend on anyone else's behavior, opinion, or presence. When you stop needing people, something remarkable happens. You stop being controllable. Think about that. The reason people can manipulate you, pressure you, influence you against your own interests is because you need something from them. You need their love. You need their approval. You need their acceptance. You need their presence. That need is the handle they grab to steer you. Remove the need and the handle disappears. Remove the need and you become unstoppable. You have a choice. Continue handing your power to everyone whose opinion you have decided matters. Or start taking that power back. One decision at a time. One boundary at a time. One moment of choosing your own judgment over someone else's approval at a time. The prison is real, but so is the key. And the key is recognizing one simple truth. Your need is their leverage. Stop needing. Stop being leveraged. Stop being controlled. Start being free. This is the foundation. This is where everything begins. Understanding that the prison exists. Understanding that you built it. Understanding that your need for others is the material it is made from. Once you see the prison clearly, you can start to escape. Once you understand the cost of dependency, you can start building independence. But understanding how you got here is only the first step. The next step is understanding why. Why were you taught to need people in the first place? Who benefits from your dependency? And how did beliefs you never chose become chains you cannot escape? You recognize the prison. Now, let's talk about who built it. Chapter 2. Why you were taught to need people. You did not choose to be dependent. You were trained to be dependent. From the moment you were born, systems and structures began installing beliefs in your mind. Beliefs you never questioned. Beliefs you never examined. Beliefs that served everyone except you. And the most destructive belief they installed was this. You need other people to be complete. You need approval to be worthy. You need validation to be valuable. That belief is not natural. That belief is programming. And understanding who programmed you is the first step to deprogramming yourself. Here is what you need to understand. Dependent people are easier to control. They are easier to predict. They're easier to manage. Every institution that has ever wanted power over human beings has understood this simple truth. If you can make someone need something, you can make them do anything to keep it. If you can make someone fear losing approval, you can make them comply with almost any demand. Your dependency is not an accident. Your dependency is a feature designed by systems that benefit from your compliance. That is the key. They taught you to need because needy people obey. Not consciously, not through some dark conspiracy. through simple mechanics, through reward and punishment, through approval and rejection, through the slow, steady shaping of your behavior until needing others felt as natural as breathing. Think about your earliest memories. What were you rewarded for? Compliance, agreement, fitting in, making others comfortable. What were you punished for? Independence, disagreement, standing out, making others uncomfortable. The training started before you could speak, before you could think critically, before you had any chance to question whether the beliefs being installed were true or useful. They were just installed, and you have been running on that programming ever since. Your family was the first institution to install this programming, not because your parents were malicious, because they were programmed too. They taught you what they believed was true. They taught you that belonging matters more than authenticity, that approval equals safety, that being accepted by the group is the highest good. They taught you to need their approval, to modify your behavior to earn their love, to believe that your worth was contingent on their validation. You have a choice. You can blame your family forever, or you can recognize that they were prisoners too, prisoners who built your cell using the same blueprints that were used to build theirs. Understanding this does not excuse the damage, but explains the mechanism. And understanding the mechanism is how you escape it. The educational system continued the programming. School was not primarily about learning. School was about compliance, about sitting still, about following instructions, about fitting into predetermined structures, about seeking approval from authority figures who held power over your future. Good grades meant teacher approval. Teacher approval meant parental approval. The entire system was designed to make you need external validation, to make you perform for others, to make your sense of worth contingent on what authority figures thought of you. Think about how deeply this programming runs. Even now, as an adult, you probably still feel anxiety when an authority figure disapproves, still feel pride when someone important praises you, still measure your worth by external metrics that others defined. That is not natural. That is programming. Programming installed so early and so consistently that it feels like your own personality. But it is not your personality. It is your conditioning. That is the key. Most of what you believe about yourself and others was installed by institutions that benefited from your belief. Your family benefited from your compliance. Your schools benefited from your obedience. Your employers benefit from your need for their approval. Your social groups benefit from your fear of rejection. Everyone benefits from your dependency, except you. It is not about becoming paranoid. It is not about seeing conspiracy everywhere. It is about recognizing a simple truth. You were taught to need people by people who needed you to need them. And you have never questioned whether that teaching was true, whether that teaching served you, whether that teaching should be uninstalled and replaced with something that actually makes you powerful. Here is how the manipulation works. Society weaponized your natural desire for connection. Connection is natural. Belonging is natural. Humans are social creatures. There is nothing wrong with wanting relationships, community, companionship. But wanting connection and needing approval are not the same thing. And society deliberately confused them. Society taught you that if you do not have approval, you do not have connection. If you do not have validation, you do not have belonging. If you do not have acceptance, you are fundamentally broken. That is a lie that keeps you controllable, a lie that keeps you compliant, a lie that keeps you performing for approval instead of living authentically. The truth is that you can have deep, meaningful connections without needing anyone's approval. You can belong without performing. You can be valued without seeking validation. But that truth does not serve the systems that want to control you. So that truth is never taught. You have a choice. Continue believing the programming, or start questioning every belief you hold about what you need from others. Where did that belief come from? Who installed it? Who benefits from you believing it? These questions are uncomfortable. These questions threaten the comfortable prison you have been living in. But these questions are the beginning of freedom. Consider this. Every belief you have about needing others can be examined. You believe you need approval to feel worthy. Who taught you that? You believe you need validation to feel confident. Where did that belief come from? You believe you need acceptance to feel complete. When was that installed? Most people never ask these questions. Most people assume their beliefs are their own. But beliefs acquired before the age of conscious reasoning are not chosen beliefs. They are inherited beliefs. And inherited beliefs should be examined, not assumed. That is the key. You are running on an operating system you did not install. You are following rules you did not create. You are living according to beliefs that were programmed into you before you could think. And until you recognize this, until you examine this, until you deliberately choose which beliefs to keep and which to discard, you will remain a prisoner of programming designed by others for their benefit. Here is the liberation protocol. Start identifying inherited beliefs versus chosen beliefs. Every time you feel the need for approval, ask yourself where that need came from. Every time you modify your behavior to please others, ask yourself who benefits. Every time you feel unworthy without external validation, question who installed that feeling. The examination itself begins the deprogramming. The awareness itself loosens the chains. You are taught to need people, but you can unteach yourself. You are programmed to seek approval, but you can reprogram yourself. You are conditioned to depend on validation, but conditioning can be reversed. The prison was built by others, but you maintain it daily through beliefs you never chose to believe. Stop maintaining it. Start dismantling it. One examined belief at a time. You understand the prison now. You understand who built it. You understand why they built it. You understand that your need for others is programming, not nature. But understanding is not enough. Understanding must lead to action. And the first action is learning to find power in what you have been taught to fear most. You learned why you were trained to need others. Now, let's talk about the thing they taught you to avoid at all costs. Chapter 3. Solitude is strength, not suffering. You are afraid of being alone. Do not deny it. Do not pretend otherwise. The thought of solitude creates discomfort in your chest. The idea of extended time with only yourself feels like punishment, like something to be avoided, like a problem to be solved rather than an opportunity to be embraced. And that fear is keeping you weak. That fear is keeping you dependent. That fear is keeping you chained to people and situations that do not deserve your presence, because you would rather be with anyone than be with yourself. Here is what you need to understand. Your fear of solitude is not natural. It is trained. It is programmed. It is the direct result of a society that taught you being alone means being broken. Being alone means being unwanted. Being alone means something is wrong with you. But that is a lie designed to keep you needy, a lie designed to keep you seeking company, even when that company costs you more than it gives. Your fear of solitude is not protecting you. Your fear of solitude is imprisoning you. That is the key. Most people have never experienced solitude as anything other than loneliness. They have never been alone without feeling abandoned. Never been by themselves without feeling incomplete. Never spent extended time in their own company without desperately seeking distraction, connection, noise to fill the silence. And because they have never experienced solitude differently, they assume their experience is the only possible experience. They assume solitude equals suffering. But solitude and loneliness are not the same thing. And confusing them is costing you everything. Loneliness is the painful absence of connection when connection is needed. Loneliness is suffering. Loneliness is a signal that something important is missing. But solitude is different. Solitude is the powerful presence of self. Solitude is chosen. Solitude is intentional. Solitude is where the strong are built. The difference is not circumstance. The difference is not whether other people are present or absent. The difference is internal. The difference is whether you need others to feel complete or whether you are complete on your own. You have a choice. Continue confusing solitude with loneliness and remain afraid of your own company. Or learn to distinguish between them and discover power you never knew you had. The person who can be alone without being lonely is the most dangerous person in any room, because that person cannot be manipulated through the threat of isolation. That person cannot be controlled through the fear of abandonment. That person has found something most people never find: themselves. Think about the strongest people you know, the people who seem unshakable, the people who make decisions without needing approval, the people who walk through life with a quiet confidence that does not depend on external validation. What do they have in common? They are comfortable alone. They do not need constant company. They do not fill every silence with noise. They do not fear their own thoughts. They have done the work of getting to know themselves. And that work happens in solitude. It is not about avoiding people. It is not about becoming a hermit. It is about building the capacity to be alone without suffering, about removing the desperation that makes you cling to people who do not deserve your presence, about developing such a solid relationship with yourself that other relationships become choices, not necessities. That is what solitude builds. That is why solitude is strength. Here is the historical truth. Every great thinker, every great leader, every great creator has understood the power of solitude, not as punishment, as practice, as the space where clarity emerges, as the silence where the signal becomes audible. The greatest ideas in human history were not born in crowded rooms filled with chatter. They were born in quiet spaces where individuals confronted their own minds without distraction. Consider the pattern. Scientists who made breakthrough discoveries often did their deepest thinking alone. Writers who created works that changed culture did so in isolation. Leaders who made decisions that shaped history often stepped away from advisors to find clarity in solitude. This is not coincidence. This is mechanism. Solitude removes the noise. Solitude eliminates the influence of others. Solitude gives you access to your own wisdom instead of drowning in the opinions of everyone around you. That is the key. You cannot hear your own voice when you are constantly surrounded by other voices. You cannot know your own mind when you're perpetually influenced by other minds. You cannot find your own path when you're always walking on paths designed by others. Solitude is not about escaping people. Solitude is about finding yourself. And until you find yourself, you will remain lost no matter how many people surround you. Now consider the modern condition. Society has made solitude almost impossible. Constant connectivity, endless notifications, perpetual availability. You are never truly alone because your phone connects you to billions of people at all times. And that constant connection is destroying your ability to be with yourself. Every uncomfortable feeling is immediately numbed with distraction. Every moment of silence is immediately filled with content. Every opportunity for solitude is immediately abandoned for stimulation. You have a choice. Continue drowning in constant connection that keeps you dependent and distracted, or start deliberately creating space for solitude that builds your independence and clarity. The world wants your attention. The world wants you connected. The world wants you needing the constant input of others. But what you need is the opposite. You need time alone. You need silence. You need the discomfort of your own company until that discomfort becomes comfort, until that comfort becomes strength. Here is the protocol for embracing solitude. Start small. 1 hour per day without phone, without entertainment, without distraction. Just you and your own thoughts. The first days will be uncomfortable. The first week will feel like punishment. Your mind will rebel. Your conditioning will scream for stimulation. But stay with it. Push through the discomfort. Because on the other side of that discomfort is something you have never experienced. Peace that does not depend on circumstances. Clarity that does not require input. Strength that comes from within instead of from others. Expand the practice. 1 day per week in complete solitude. No calls. No messages. No social media. No external contact. Just you. Learning who you are when no one is watching. Discovering what you think when no one is influencing. Finding out what you want when no one is suggesting. This practice will teach you more about yourself than years of conversation with others. Because others can only reflect back what they see. Only you can access what is truly inside. The goal is not permanent isolation. The goal is choice. The goal is being able to be alone without suffering. The goal is removing the desperate need that makes you cling to connections that damage you. When you can be alone powerfully, you choose relationships differently. You choose them from abundance, not scarcity. From strength, not weakness. From genuine desire, not desperate need. That is the key. Solitude is where the strong are built. Not because solitude is pleasant. Not because being alone is always comfortable. But because the capacity to be alone without suffering is the foundation of all independence. Without that capacity, you'll always be controllable, always be manipulable, always be dependent on others for a peace you should be able to generate yourself. It is not about loving solitude more than company. It is about being equally comfortable with both, about having the option, about removing the fear that keeps you trapped with people who do not serve you simply because the alternative seems unbearable. When solitude becomes strength instead of suffering, your entire life changes. Your relationships improve because they are chosen, not needed. Your decisions improve because they are yours, not influenced by everyone around you. Your peace improves because it comes from within, not from external circumstances. You understand the prison of needing others. You understand who taught you to need them. Now you understand that the fear of solitude is what keeps the prison locked. Solitude is not the enemy. Solitude is the training ground where independence is built. Embrace it, practice it, master it, and watch what happens when you no longer fear your own company. You learn to find strength in solitude. But there is another dependency most people never recognize. A dependency that hands control of your inner world to everyone around you. Chapter 4. Stop outsourcing your emotional state. Your mood this morning was not determined by you. It was determined by someone else. By something else. By circumstances outside your control. Maybe someone said something that upset you. Maybe someone failed to say something you needed to hear. Maybe traffic was bad. Maybe a message was ignored. Maybe a comment online triggered anger. Whatever it was, your emotional state was decided by external forces. And you handed over that control without even noticing. You outsourced your emotions. And that outsourcing is destroying your independence. Here is what you need to understand. Most people have given complete control of their inner world to the outer world. Their happiness depends on circumstances. Their confidence depends on validation. Their peace depends on everything going smoothly. When external conditions are good, they feel good. When external conditions are bad, they feel bad. They are emotional puppets, and the strings are held by everyone and everything except themselves. Your emotions are yours to control, not theirs to determine. but you have forgotten that. Or maybe you never learned it in the first place. That is the key. Emotional outsourcing is the most common form of dependency, and it is the most invisible. You might recognize when you need someone financially. You might notice when you need someone practically. But emotional dependency hides in plain sight. It disguises itself as normal, as reasonable, as the way humans work. Someone insults you, of course you feel bad. Someone praises you, of course you feel good. Someone ignores you, of course you feel rejected. But that cause and effect relationship is not inevitable. It is trained, it is chosen, and it can be unchosen. Think about your average day. How many times does your emotional state shift based on external input? A rude driver and your mood darkens. A compliment from a stranger and your mood brightens. A critical email and your confidence drops. A like on social media and your confidence rises. You are a ship being tossed by every wave. And you have convinced yourself this is normal, that this is how emotions work, that you have no choice in the matter. But you do have a choice. You have always had a choice. You just never exercised it. You have a choice. Continue letting external circumstances determine your internal state. Or start building the capacity to generate your own emotions regardless of what happens around you. One path keeps you weak, reactive, and dependent. The other path makes you powerful, proactive, and free. The difference is not circumstances. The difference is not what happens to you. The difference is whether you take responsibility for your emotional state or continue blaming it on everything and everyone else. Here is the real-world cost of emotional outsourcing. It shows up everywhere, in every area of your life, making you weaker than you need to be, making you more dependent than you should be, making you controllable by anyone who understands the strings attached to your emotions. Consider the person whose entire day is ruined by one critical comment. They could accomplish 10 things successfully. They could receive 9 compliments. But one criticism, one negative word, one expression of disapproval erases everything else. Their emotional state has been outsourced to whoever offers criticism. That person holds the power. That person determines the day, not through their authority, not through their importance, simply through the outsourcing that gives their words disproportionate power. Consider the person who cannot feel successful until others acknowledge their success. They achieve something meaningful. They accomplish something significant. But they feel nothing until someone else notices, until someone else validates, until someone else confirms that the achievement was real. Their sense of success has been outsourced. They cannot generate it internally. They can only receive it externally. And that means they are dependent on others for something they should be able to create themselves. Consider the person who cannot feel attractive until someone else confirms it. They look in a mirror and feel uncertain. They dress well and still doubt themselves. They need a compliment, a look, a validation to feel good about their appearance. Their self-image has been outsourced, handed over to whoever is willing to offer approval. And when approval is not offered, they feel unattractive regardless of what the mirror shows. That is the key. Emotional outsourcing makes you a beggar. An emotional beggar waiting for others to give you what you should be generating yourself. Waiting for validation you should be creating internally. Waiting for confidence that should come from within. Waiting for peace that should not depend on external circumstances. Begging is weakness, and most people are begging every single day without recognizing what they are doing. It is not about ignoring emotions. It is not about becoming a robot. It is about recognizing that you have far more control over your emotional state than you have been exercising. About understanding that the automatic reaction you feel when something happens is not mandatory. It is programmed, and programming can be changed. Reactions can be chosen instead of automatic. Responses can be deliberate instead of reflexive. Here is how to build emotional self-sufficiency. Start by recognizing the outsourcing when it happens. Every time your mood shifts because of something external, notice it. Do not judge it. Do not try to change it immediately. Just notice. Build awareness of how often your emotional state is determined by circumstances outside your control. This awareness alone begins the transformation. Because what you see clearly, you can change deliberately. Next, insert a pause between stimulus and response. Something happens. Instead of reacting immediately, pause. 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds. In that pause, recognize that you have a choice. The automatic reaction is not mandatory. The programmed response is not inevitable. You can choose a different response. You can choose to not let this external event determine your internal state. The pause is where power lives. The pause is where freedom is born. Then, practice generating emotions internally instead of requiring them externally. You want to feel confident. Instead of waiting for someone to validate you, find reasons for confidence within yourself. Review your accomplishments. Recall your capabilities. Remember times you succeeded. Generate the feeling without external input. You want to feel peaceful. Instead of waiting for circumstances to be smooth, create peace through acceptance, through presence, through choosing peace regardless of what is happening around you. You have a choice. Keep outsourcing your emotions and remain a puppet, or start generating your emotions internally and become the master of your inner world. The external world will always be chaotic. People will always disappoint. Circumstances will always fluctuate. But your internal world can be stable. Your emotional state can be chosen. Your peace can be unconditional. If you take responsibility for it, if you stop blaming externals, if you start doing the work of emotional self-sufficiency. Here is the truth most people never accept. No one is coming to make you feel good. No one is obligated to validate you. No one owes you the emotional input you have been waiting for. And even if they gave it to you, it would be temporary. It would need to be repeated. You would need another hit of external validation tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Outsourced emotions create addiction. The high fades. The need returns. The cycle repeats. But internally generated emotions create stability. They do not depend on others. They do not fade when validation disappears. They are yours, permanently. That is the key. Emotional independence is not about feeling good all the time. It is about your feelings being yours, not controlled by circumstances, not determined by others, not dependent on things you cannot control. When your emotional state is truly yours, you become uncontrollable. No one can manipulate you through approval or disapproval. No one can influence you through praise or criticism. No one can destabilize you through their behavior, because your stability comes from within. It is not about becoming cold. It is not about disconnecting from emotions. It is about owning your emotions, about taking responsibility for your inner world, about stopping the blame that says my mood is bad because of what they did. Your mood is yours. What they did is irrelevant unless you decide it is relevant. That decision is yours. That power is yours. Stop giving it away. The prison of needing others is built on emotional outsourcing. The dependency you feel is fundamentally emotional. You need their approval because you have outsourced your sense of worth. You need their validation because you have outsourced your confidence. You need their presence because you have outsourced your peace. Take back what you outsourced. Generate internally what you have been begging for externally, and watch the prison walls begin to crumble. You learn to stop outsourcing your emotional state. But there's another pattern that keeps you dependent, a pattern that leaks your power every time you practice it. The pattern of announcing, sharing, and seeking input when silence would serve you better. Chapter 5. the quiet power of moving in silence. You announce everything, every goal, every plan, every intention, every step of your journey. You share before you start. You update others while you work. You broadcast your progress to anyone who will listen. And you think this is normal. You think this is healthy. You think sharing your plans creates accountability and support. But you are wrong. Every time you announce, you leak power. Every time you share prematurely, you weaken your position. Every time you seek input before execution, you hand control to people who have not earned it. And this pattern is keeping you dependent when you should be becoming unstoppable. Here is what you need to understand. Announcing your plans gives others the opportunity to influence them, not through wisdom, not through experience, through their own fears, limitations, and projections. When you tell someone your goal, they do not respond to your potential. They respond from their own psychology. Their doubts become your doubts. Their fears become your fears. Their limitations become your limitations. You absorb their energy whether you intend to or not. And most of the time, that energy is not helpful, is harmful. Move silent. Arrive loud. That is the way of the powerful. That is the way of the independent. That is the key. Silence protects your vision from contamination. When you keep your plans to yourself, they remain pure, uncorrupted by the opinions of others, unweakened by the doubts of people who have never attempted what you are attempting. Your vision stays yours. Your energy stays focused on execution instead of explanation. Your power stays concentrated instead of dispersed through endless conversations about what you're going to do. Think about your pattern. You decide on a goal. What is your first instinct? To tell someone, to share it, to announce it. You want the validation of their approval. You want the support of their encouragement. You want to feel like you are already making progress simply by talking about the progress you have not yet made. But that instinct is sabotaging you. That instinct is trading the feeling of progress for actual progress. That instinct is leaking power you need for execution. You have a choice. Continue announcing and remain dependent on the responses of others. Or start moving in silence and discover the power of contained energy. One path disperses your force across conversations, explanations, and negotiations with people who do not matter. The other path concentrates your force on the only thing that matters: execution, results, arrival. Here is why announcing weakens you. When you share a goal, your brain receives a small hit of satisfaction. Psychological research confirms this. Telling others about your intentions creates a premature sense of accomplishment. You feel like you have done something simply by saying you will do something, and that feeling reduces your motivation to actually do it. The announcement becomes a substitute for the achievement. The talking becomes a replacement for the doing. You satisfied the need for progress without actually progressing. Consider how often this has happened in your life. You announced a fitness goal and never followed through. You told everyone about your business idea and never executed. You shared your creative project and never completed it. The pattern is consistent. The more you announce, the less you accomplish. Not because you are lazy, because you leaked the energy that should have gone into execution. You spent it on explanation. You traded it for validation. You dispersed it through conversations that accomplished nothing except making you feel temporarily good. That is the key. Announcement is often procrastination disguised as progress. It feels like action. It looks like commitment, but it is neither. It is performance. It is seeking approval for intentions instead of results. It is needing others to validate your goals before you pursue them. And that need keeps you dependent. That need keeps you controllable. That need keeps you weak. It is not about secrecy for its own sake. It is not about being mysterious for the image. It is about protecting your energy, about preserving your power, about keeping your force concentrated on the work instead of dispersed across explanations. The strong do not need others to know their plans. They do not need approval before starting. They do not need encouragement to continue. They work in silence. They execute without announcement. They let results speak because results are the only speech that matters. Here is the attention trap that social media has created. You have been conditioned to share everything. Every meal, every workout, every thought, every step of every journey. Social media rewards sharing with likes, comments, validation. It has trained you to document your life instead of live it, to perform your progress instead of make it, to seek attention instead of achieve results. And this conditioning is destroying your capacity for silent execution. Consider the math. Every minute spent crafting an update about your progress is a minute not spent actually progressing. Every bit of energy used to explain your journey is energy not used to travel it. Every validation received from announcing creates dependency on more validation. The attention you receive becomes a need that keeps you posting, sharing, updating, announcing. A need that keeps you dependent on the responses of people who are not doing what you are doing. A need that makes you weaker every time it is fed. You have a choice. Continue feeding the attention need and remain trapped in the cycle of announcement and validation. Or starve the need through deliberate silence and discover independence you have never experienced. The withdrawal will be uncomfortable. The urge to share will be strong. The habit of announcement is deeply programmed. But on the other side of that discomfort is power. Real power. The power of someone who does not need anyone to know what they are doing. The power of someone who works for results, not recognition. The power of someone who arrives loud because they move silent. Here is the protocol for moving in silence. Stop announcing goals. Make a decision and tell no one. Set a target and keep it private. The goal exists whether others know about it or not. And keeping it private protects it from their influence, preserves your energy for execution, and removes the premature satisfaction that kills motivation. Stop seeking approval before starting. You do not need permission. You do not need encouragement. You do not need anyone to agree with your vision before you pursue it. Their agreement is irrelevant. Their approval is unnecessary. Start without announcement. Begin without approval. Execute without the validation you have been conditioned to seek. Stop updating people on your progress. They do not need to know. You do not need their feedback. The work is the work. The progress is the progress. Sharing it disperses energy that should stay concentrated. Save the revelation for the results. Save the announcement for the arrival. Until then, silence. Complete, powerful, protective silence. That is the key. Move silent. Arrive loud. The people who accomplish the most often share the least. Not because they are secretive by nature, because they understand the economics of energy. Talking costs energy. Explaining costs energy. Seeking approval costs energy. And energy spent on those activities is energy not spent on execution. The math is simple. The discipline is hard, but the results are undeniable. It is not about never sharing anything. It is not about isolation from all feedback. It is about timing. Share after accomplishment, not before. Seek input from carefully selected sources, not from everyone. Keep your energy contained until the work is done. Then let results announce what silence protected. Think about the shift this creates. When you stop announcing, you stop needing approval to begin. When you stop updating, you stop needing encouragement to continue. When you stop seeking input, you stop being influenced by people who have not earned influence. Your dependency decreases. Your power increases. Your independence becomes real instead of theoretical. The prison of needing others is fed by your need to be witnessed, by your need to be acknowledged, by your need to have others know what you are doing and approve of it. Moving in silence starves that need. proves you do not require witnesses, demonstrates you do not need acknowledgement, shows you can work, execute, and accomplish without anyone else knowing or caring. That is independence. That is power. That is the quiet strength of someone who moves silent and arrives loud. You learn to move in silence. But silence does not mean isolation. Independence does not mean avoiding all connection. The goal is not to have no relationships. The goal is to have relationships without dependency. Chapter 6. Relationships without dependency. You think independence means isolation. You think not needing people means not having people. You think the choice is between dependency and loneliness. But you are wrong. That is a false binary created to keep you trapped, to make you believe that the only alternative to needing others is being completely alone. The truth is different. The truth is more powerful. You can have deep, meaningful relationships without dependency. You can love people without needing them. You can connect without clinging. And those relationships will be better than anything you have experienced while trapped in the prison of need. Here is what you need to understand. Need destroys what freedom preserves. When you need a relationship, you damage it. Your need creates pressure. Your need creates desperation. Your need makes you cling, control, compromise in ways that erode the connection. But when you choose a relationship freely, without need, something different happens. The relationship breathes. It grows. It becomes a source of joy instead of anxiety. Not because the other person changed, because your relationship to the relationship changed. You stopped needing it to survive. You started choosing it to thrive. That is the key. The best relationships are between two people who do not need each other. Two complete individuals who choose to share their completeness. Not two half people desperately clinging together, hoping to form one whole. That clinging creates codependency. That desperation creates toxicity. The need creates the very problems that destroy what you were trying to preserve. The paradox is real. The less you need the relationship, the better the relationship becomes. Think about your current relationships. The ones that cause you the most anxiety. The ones where you constantly worry, where you feel insecure, where you modify yourself to keep the connection. Those are the relationships built on need. Your need for their presence. Your need for their approval. You need to not be alone. And that need is poisoning the connection, making it fragile, making it conditional, making it a source of stress instead of strength. Now, think about the relationships where you feel at ease, where you do not constantly worry, where you show up as yourself without performance. Those relationships probably involve less need, more choice, more freedom. You are there because you want to be, not because you are afraid of the alternative. And that freedom makes everything better. The conversations, the connection, the joy. Freedom improves what need destroys. You have a choice. Continue building relationships on the foundation of need and watch them crack under the pressure. Or start building relationships on the foundation of choice and discover connections stronger than anything need could create. The first path is familiar. It is what you know. It is how you have always operated. But familiarity does not mean effectiveness. The second path requires transformation, requires becoming someone who does not need relationships to feel complete. But that transformation creates relationship capacity you never knew was possible. Here is the difference between need-based and choice-based connections. Need-based relationships are built on fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough on your own. Fear of facing life without someone else. These relationships feel intense because fear is intense. They feel important because fear makes everything feel urgent. But they are fundamentally unstable because fear is not a foundation. Fear is a crack that spreads under pressure. Choice-based relationships are built on appreciation, on aligned values, on genuine enjoyment of the other person, not on what they provide that you cannot provide yourself, not on the hole they fill in your incomplete self, on the addition they bring to your already complete life. These relationships feel different, calmer, more secure, not because there is no passion, because there is no desperation. And desperation was never passion anyway. Desperation was fear wearing passion's clothes. That is the key. Need-based relationships breed resentment. You resent needing them. They resent being needed. The dependency creates obligation. The obligation creates pressure. The pressure creates conflict. And eventually, the resentment poisons everything. But choice-based relationships breed respect. You respect their independence. They respect yours. Neither is trapped by the other. Neither is obligated beyond genuine desire. And that mutual respect creates connection that need could never build. It is not about loving people less. It is about loving them differently, loving without needing, caring without clinging, connecting without dependency. This is mature love. This is sustainable connection. This is what relationships look like between two people who have done the work of becoming complete on their own. Here is how to restructure existing relationships. Start by examining the need. What specifically do you need from this relationship? Approval? Validation? Company? Security? Identify the need precisely. Because what you can identify, you can address. What remains vague continues to control you. Name the need. Understand the need. Then ask yourself whether you can meet that need internally instead of requiring it externally. You need approval from your partner. Why? What happens if you do not receive it? Can you generate self-approval that reduces the need for theirs? You need validation from your friends. Why? What hole does their validation fill? Can you fill that hole yourself? You need company to avoid loneliness. Why? Can you develop the capacity to be alone without suffering? The questions are uncomfortable. The answers require work. But the work creates freedom, and freedom creates better relationships. Next, practice non-attachment within the relationship. This does not mean not caring. This means caring without clinging, appreciating without requiring, enjoying without depending. It means recognizing that the relationship is a choice made fresh every day by both parties. It means accepting that the other person is free to leave, and so are you. This acceptance feels threatening at first, because your need wants guarantees. Your fear wants permanence. But guarantees based on need are not guarantees. They are prisons. For both of you, you have a choice. Keep your relationships as prisons where both parties are trapped by need, or transform them into gardens where both parties stay because they choose to. Prisons feel secure but breed resentment. Gardens feel open but breed growth. The choice determines the quality of every connection you will ever have. Here is what happens when you stop needing relationships. First, bad relationships end. The relationships you are only maintaining out of fear of being alone fall away when the fear disappears. This feels like loss initially, but it is liberation. Those relationships were draining you, costing you, keeping you from better connections. Their ending creates space for what serves you. Second, good relationships improve. When you stop needing your partner, your friends, your family, those relationships breathe. The pressure releases. The desperation disappears. You show up differently, more confident, more secure, more yourself, and they respond to that. They feel the shift. They appreciate the freedom. The relationship becomes what it always could have been if need had not been poisoning it. Third, new relationships form on better foundations. When you meet people from a place of completeness instead of need, you attract different people. People who are also complete. People who are also free. People who want connection without dependency. The quality of what you attract changes because the quality of what you project changes. Neediness attracts those who want to be needed or those who exploit need. Completeness attracts those who appreciate completeness. That is the key. Your relationship capacity is limited by your independence capacity. If you cannot be alone, you cannot be with others in a healthy way. If you need people, you damage people. If you cling to connections, you strangle them. Building independence is not anti-relationship. Building independence is the foundation for better relationships than you have ever experienced. It is not about eliminating all connection. It is not about becoming an island. It is about transforming the nature of your connections from need-based to choice-based, from dependency to appreciation, from fear to freedom. The relationships you have after this transformation will not look the same as the relationships you had before. They will look better, feel better, be better, because they will be between free people who choose each other instead of captive people who need each other. Consider what this means practically. You can love your partner deeply without needing them to complete you. You can appreciate your friends genuinely without requiring their constant validation. You can value your family sincerely without depending on their approval. The love does not decrease. The appreciation does not fade. The value does not diminish. What changes is the underlying structure. What disappears is the desperation. What remains is pure connection, uncorrupted by need. You learn to build relationships without dependency. But there is one specific form of need that underlies almost all the others. A need so pervasive that you probably do not recognize how completely it controls you. The need for validation. Chapter 7. Eliminating the need for validation. You are addicted, not to substances, not to behaviors, to validation, to the approval of others, to the confirmation that you are good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, successful enough. You need people to tell you that you matter. You need external voices to confirm your internal worth. And this addiction is the most destructive dependency you carry. Because unlike other addictions, this one is invisible. It is normalized. It is encouraged. Society tells you that seeking validation is healthy, that caring what others think is mature, that needing approval is human. But society is wrong. Validation seeking is power leaking, and you have been leaking power your entire life. Here is what you need to understand. Every time you seek validation, you hand someone else the authority to determine your worth. You make them a judge. You make yourself the judged. You position yourself below them, waiting for their verdict, hoping their assessment is favorable. And even when they validate you, the relief is temporary. The need returns. The seeking resumes. Because external validation never fills the internal hole. It just temporarily covers it. Then the cover slips, and you need another hit, another compliment, another confirmation, another external voice telling you what you should be able to know yourself. That is the key. Validation addiction operates like any other addiction. Tolerance builds. You need more validation to feel the same effect. Withdrawal occurs. Without validation, you feel anxious, uncertain, incomplete. The cycle perpetuates. Seek, receive, temporary relief, need again, seek again. And like any addiction, this one keeps you enslaved, dependent, controlled by whoever holds the supply of what you crave. Think about how often you seek validation in a single day. You post something online and check for likes. Validation seeking. You share an accomplishment and wait for praise. Validation seeking. You express an opinion and gauge reactions. Validation seeking. You make a decision and look for agreement. Validation seeking. You dress a certain way and hope for compliments. Validation seeking. The behavior is so constant, so normalized, so automatic that you probably do not recognize it as seeking. But it is. Every time you look externally for confirmation of your worth, you're seeking validation. And every time you seek, you leak power. You have a choice. Continue seeking validation and remain dependent on external sources for your sense of worth. Or start building an internal validation system and become someone whose worth is self-determined. The first path keeps you begging, keeps you checking, keeps you anxious about what others think. The second path makes you solid, stable, secure in a way that does not depend on anyone else's opinion. Here is why external validation never satisfies, because it addresses the wrong problem. You seek validation because you feel uncertain about your worth. You believe external confirmation will resolve that uncertainty, but does not. It cannot, because the uncertainty is internal, and internal problems require internal solutions. External validation is like drinking salt water to cure thirst. It feels like it should help, but makes the problem worse. It increases the need instead of satisfying it. Consider this pattern. You receive a compliment. You feel good for a moment. Then doubt creeps back. Was the compliment sincere? Did they really mean it? Maybe they were just being nice. The validation dissolves. You need another one. You receive praise for your work. You feel confident, briefly. Then questions arise. Was it actually good? Would others agree? Maybe they were just being polite. The confidence fades. You need more praise. The cycle never ends because external validation cannot solve internal uncertainty. Only internal validation can do that. That is the key. You're seeking from others what only you can give yourself. The certainty you crave, the confidence you need, the sense of worth you desperately want. Others cannot give you these things. They can only give you temporary approximations that fade within hours. The real thing must be generated internally, must come from your own assessment of your own worth, must be built on a foundation that does not require external confirmation. It is not about ignoring all feedback. It is not about becoming delusional about your abilities. It is about being the primary source of your own validation. About external feedback being information you consider, not verdicts you require. About your sense of worth being stable regardless of whether others provide positive input. The distinction matters. Information can be useful. Dependency is always destructive. Here is how to build an internal validation system. Start by becoming your own evaluator. You create something. Instead of immediately seeking external feedback, evaluate yourself first. Is it good by your standards? Does it meet your criteria? What would you improve? Develop the capacity to assess your own work without requiring others to assess it for you. This capacity is a skill. Skills are built through practice. Practice evaluating yourself until self-evaluation becomes primary and external evaluation becomes supplementary. Next, define your own criteria for success. Most people use borrowed criteria. They define success by what others have told them success means, what society values, what their family approves, what their peers admire. But borrowed criteria create permanent dependency on those who loan them. Define your own criteria. What does success mean to you? What does quality mean in your work? What matters to you regardless of what matters to others? When your criteria are truly yours, your validation can be truly yours as well. Then, practice creating without sharing. This is the validation detox. Create something and do not show anyone. Write something and do not publish it. Accomplish something and do not announce it. The urge to share is the validation addiction expressing itself. The urge to seek feedback is the dependency asserting itself. Sit with the discomfort of not seeking. Build tolerance for unvalidated accomplishment. Discover that your work has value whether or not others confirm it. That your worth exists whether or not others acknowledge it. You have a choice. Keep seeking validation and remain enslaved to whoever might provide it. Or build internal validation and discover freedom you have never experienced. The seeking feels natural because it is practiced. The building feels difficult because it is new. But natural does not mean healthy, and difficult does not mean wrong. The difficult path leads to independence. The natural path keeps you addicted. Here is what happens when you stop needing validation. First, you stop being controllable through approval and disapproval. When someone's approval does not determine your worth, their disapproval cannot diminish it. You become immune to manipulation through validation. Others cannot control you by offering or withholding what you no longer need. This immunity changes every relationship, every interaction, every negotiation. You enter from a position of strength instead of need. Second, your decisions improve. When you stop seeking agreement before acting, you make decisions faster. When you stop needing approval before committing, you commit more fully. When you stop checking for validation after choosing, you move forward without hesitation. Your decision-making becomes cleaner, quicker, more aligned with your own judgment instead of distorted by the anticipated judgments of others. Third, your creativity explodes. Validation seeking constrains creation. You do not express what is true. You express what will be approved. You do not create what is meaningful. You create what will be praised. When the need for validation disappears, those constraints disappear with it. You create freely. Express authentically. Produce work that reflects you instead of work that reflects what you think others want to see. That is the key. Validation need is creative prison. It keeps you producing what is safe, what is expected, what will receive the approval you crave. Eliminating the need opens doors you did not know existed. Possibilities you never explored because they might not be validated. Expressions you never attempted because they might not be approved. Freedom from validation need is freedom to become who you actually are instead of who you think others want you to be. It is not about becoming immune to all feedback. It is not about refusing to hear criticism. It is about changing your relationship to feedback from need to choice, from requirement to consideration, from dependency to information. Feedback that is considered thoughtfully is useful. Feedback that is desperately needed is controlling. The difference is in your relationship to it, in whether you can take it or leave it, in whether your worth survives regardless of what the feedback says. Consider the transformation this creates. You share work and receive criticism. Before, this would destabilize you, shake your confidence, make you question everything. Now, you evaluate the criticism on its merits. Is it valid? Is it useful? Does it align with your own assessment? You consider it without being controlled by it. You incorporate what is valuable without being devastated by what is negative. Your relationship to feedback transforms from desperate reception to thoughtful consideration. Here is the protocol for validation detox. For the next 30 days, do not seek validation for anything. Do not fish for compliments. Do not check metrics obsessively. Do not share accomplishments hoping for praise. Do not ask if something is good when you really want to be told it is good. Notice every urge to seek validation. Sit with that urge instead of acting on it. Build tolerance for unvalidated existence. Discover that you survive without the validation you thought you needed. That you thrive without the approval you believed was essential. The withdrawal will be uncomfortable. The urge will be strong. The habit is deep. But on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. Real freedom. The freedom of someone whose worth is self-determined, whose confidence is internally generated, whose sense of value does not depend on external confirmation. That freedom is worth the discomfort of getting there. You learn to eliminate the need for validation. But there is another form of dependency that underlies much of what we have discussed. A practical dependency that creates emotional dependency. A dependency that limits your options and forces you to tolerate situations you should walk away from. Chapter 8. Financial independence is emotional independence. You think your financial situation is separate from your emotional life. You think money is practical and emotions are personal. Two different categories, two different concerns. But you are wrong. Your financial dependency is creating your emotional dependency. Your need for someone else's money is creating your need for their approval. Your reliance on a paycheck is creating your reliance on your employer's validation. The connection is direct. The causation is clear. And until you address your financial dependency, your emotional independence will remain theoretical. A nice idea you cannot actually live because your survival depends on people whose approval you therefore cannot afford to lose. Here is what you need to understand. Money buys freedom from needing. Not happiness, not fulfillment, not meaning. Freedom. When you have enough money that you're not desperate, you can make choices based on preference instead of necessity. You can walk away from situations that do not serve you. You can say no to demands that violate your values. You can refuse to tolerate treatment that diminishes you. But when you're financially dependent, you cannot do any of these things. Your need for their money becomes their leverage over your behavior. Your survival depends on their approval, and that dependency corrupts everything. That is the key. Financial need creates emotional prison. You hate your job, but cannot leave because you need the paycheck. You tolerate a toxic boss because unemployment is not an option. You silence your true opinions because disagreement might cost you the income you require. You accept conditions you should reject because rejection would mean financial catastrophe. This is not emotional weakness. This is rational calculation. When your survival depends on someone, you cannot afford to displease them. The math is simple. The imprisonment is complete. Think about your current situation. How much of your behavior is shaped by financial dependency? How many compromises have you made because you need the money? How many opinions have you silenced because expressing them might threaten your income? How many situations have you tolerated that you should have exited because leaving was not financially viable? If you're honest, the answer is probably more than you want to admit. Financial dependency is shaping your life in ways you have normalized but should not accept. You have a choice. Continue ignoring the connection between financial and emotional dependency, or start building financial independence as the foundation for emotional independence. The first path keeps you trapped, keeps you compromising, keeps you tolerating what you should not tolerate. The second path creates options. Options to leave, options to refuse, options to walk away from anything that does not serve you. And options are freedom. Options are power. Options are what financial independence actually provides. Here is the real-world cost of financial dependency. It shows up in every area of your life. Corrupting relationships, compromising integrity, constraining choices, making you smaller than you need to be. Consider the talented employee who tolerates abuse because they need the paycheck. They know their boss is toxic. They know the environment is harmful. They know staying is damaging them. But they cannot leave. Bills must be paid. Family must be supported. Responsibilities must be met. So they tolerate. Day after day, year after year, their spirit eroding, their self-respect diminishing, their authentic self disappearing. All because financial dependency removed the option to leave. Their need became their boss's leverage, and that leverage was used. Consciously or unconsciously, it was used. Consider the entrepreneur who compromises their vision because they need investors. They had a clear idea, a genuine vision, something they believed would matter. But investors wanted changes. Investors had different priorities. Investors controlled the money. So the entrepreneur compromised. diluted the vision, changed the direction, made something they no longer believed in to satisfy those who held financial power. Their dependency on funding became leverage for those providing it. The vision became a negotiation, and the entrepreneur lost. Consider the adult child who silences their true self because they need the inheritance. They have opinions their parents would not approve, beliefs their family would reject, a life they want to live that differs from the life expected of them. But the inheritance matters. The financial support continues. The dependency persists. So they perform, hide who they really are, pretend to be who their family wants. All because financial dependency created leverage that shaped their entire identity. That is the key. When you need someone else's money, you need their approval. You cannot separate these. The need for money and the need for approval become the same need. Because displeasing those who control your finances threatens your survival. And survival needs override everything else. You will compromise integrity for survival. You will silence truth for survival. You will perform, pretend, and diminish yourself for survival. Financial dependency makes all of this inevitable. It is not about becoming wealthy. It is not about accumulating massive assets. It is about sufficiency, having enough that you are not desperate, having options so you're not trapped, having the ability to survive without any single source of income. That level of financial independence is achievable for most people. Not easily, not quickly, but achievably. And achieving it transforms everything. Because when you can survive without them, you can be authentic with them. When you can leave, you can stay on your own terms. When you can say no, your yes means something. Here is how to build toward financial self-sufficiency. Start with the emergency fund. Money set aside that could sustain you if income disappeared. 3 months of expenses, then 6 months, then a year. This buffer changes your psychology before it changes your circumstances. Knowing you could survive changes how you operate. The desperation decreases. The options increase. The leverage others hold over you weakens with every dollar you save. Next, develop multiple income sources. Dependency on a single source is maximum vulnerability. If that source disappears, you have nothing. If that source makes demands, you must comply. But multiple sources distribute the risk. No single source has complete leverage. No single loss creates total catastrophe. You can lose one source and survive on others. You can refuse demand from one source because others sustain you. Diversification of income is diversification of freedom. Then, reduce expenses to minimum comfort. Not minimum survival, minimum comfort, the level at which you live well enough without excess. Because expenses determine how much income you need. High expenses require high income. High income requirements create high dependency. But low expenses require less income. Less income requirement creates less dependency. Every expense you eliminate is freedom you purchase. Every need you release is leverage you remove from others. You have a choice. Continue spending everything you earn and remain maximally dependent on income sources. Or start building financial reserves and discover independence that changes everything. The spending feels good in the moment. The reserve feels restrictive. But the spending creates dependency and the reserve creates freedom. Short-term pleasure versus long-term power. The choice reveals what you actually value. Here is what happens when you achieve financial independence. First, you stop tolerating situations you should exit. The job that drains you becomes leavable. The relationship where money is leverage becomes renegotiable. The circumstance that compromises you becomes rejectable. Options appear where before there were only traps. Because survival no longer depends on staying. Because you can afford to leave. And that ability to leave changes everything about whether you stay. Second, your authenticity increases. When you do not need their money, you do not need their approval. When you do not need their approval, you can express your true opinions, your real beliefs, your actual self. The performance stops being necessary. The hiding becomes optional. You can be who you are because being who you are no longer threatens your survival. Financial independence creates space for authenticity that financial dependency makes impossible. Third, your relationships transform. Money stops being leverage. Others can no longer control you through financial dependency. Partners cannot trap you through economic necessity. Employers cannot manipulate you through paycheck dependency. Family cannot pressure you through inheritance expectations. The relationships that remain are the relationships you choose, not the ones you are trapped in. The connections that survive are genuine, not based on financial need. That is the key. Financial independence is not about money. Financial independence is about power. The power to choose. The power to leave. The power to say no. The power to be authentic without risking survival. Money is just the mechanism. Freedom is the actual prize. And that freedom transforms every area of your life in ways that pure emotional work cannot. It is not about obsessing over money. It is not about making wealth your god. It is about recognizing the practical reality. Financial dependency creates emotional dependency. Financial options create emotional options. You cannot be emotionally independent while financially desperate. The two are connected. The foundation must be built. And building it is work worth doing because what it enables is worth having. Consider this truth. Every form of dependency we have discussed connects to financial dependency. You need approval from your employer because you need their money. You tolerate relationships because leaving would create financial hardship. You seek validation from those who might advance your career. You silence yourself with people who control your economic future. The emotional dependencies have financial roots. Pull up the roots, and the dependencies wither. Here is the protocol for building financial independence. Track every expense for 30 days. See clearly where your money goes. Identify what is necessary and what is habit, what is genuine need, and what is manufactured want. Clarity precedes change. You cannot fix what you do not see. See first, then act. Cut expenses that do not serve your freedom. Every subscription you do not use. Every purchase that provides momentary pleasure but no lasting value. Every expense that exists because you never questioned whether it should. Redirect that money to reserves, to freedom, to options. Every dollar moved from expense to reserve is a dollar moved from dependency to independence. Increase income through skill development. Skills that can generate income independently of any single employer. Skills that create options. Skills that make you valuable in multiple contexts. The more ways you can earn, the less any single source controls you. The more skills you have, the more freedom you possess. Skill development is freedom development. Invest accordingly. You learned that financial independence creates emotional independence. But all of this learning, all of this building, all of this transformation leads to one capability. The capability that makes you truly free. The ability to walk away from anything that does not serve you. Chapter 9. Walking away is your greatest power. You cannot walk away. That is your problem. That is your prison. That is the reason every other form of independence we have discussed remains theoretical instead of actual. You know what you should leave. You know which relationships drain you. You know which situations diminish you. You know which circumstances are destroying you slowly. But you cannot walk away. You stay. You tolerate. You endure. And that inability to leave is the chain that keeps you bound to everything that does not serve you. The person who can walk away controls everything. And you cannot walk away from anything. Here is what you need to understand. The ability to walk away is the ultimate power in any situation, in any relationship, in any negotiation. The person who can leave holds all the leverage. The person who must stay holds none. When you can walk away, others must consider your needs. When you cannot walk away, they can ignore them. When you can leave, your presence is a choice they must earn. When you cannot leave, your presence is guaranteed regardless of how they treat you. This is not theory. This is mechanics. The mechanics of power in every human interaction. That is the key. Walking away is not about being cold. It is not about being heartless. It is about having options, about not being trapped, about possessing the freedom to exit any situation that violates your standards, compromises your values, or diminishes your well-being. That freedom changes everything. It changes how others treat you because they know you can leave. It changes how you feel because you know you are choosing to stay. It changes the entire dynamic from captivity to choice. Think about the situations you cannot leave. The job you hate but need. The relationship that drains you but feels necessary. The environment that diminishes you but seems inescapable. The circumstance that violates your values but appears permanent. What makes them inescapable? What makes leaving seem impossible? If you examine honestly, the answer is usually the same. Fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of what others will think. Fear of the temporary pain that leaving would cause. Your inability to walk away is not circumstantial. It is psychological, and psychological barriers can be dismantled. You have a choice. Continue being unable to leave and remain trapped in situations that destroy you. Or start building walkaway capability and discover freedom you have never experienced. The first path is familiar. It is comfortable in its discomfort. You know the pain of staying. It is predictable. The second path is unknown. It requires facing fears you have been avoiding. It requires tolerating temporary uncertainty for permanent freedom. The choice is yours. But understand what each choice creates. Here is why most people cannot walk away. Fear of the unknown paralyzes them. The situation they are in is bad, but is known. The alternative is unknown. And the human brain is wired to prefer known pain over unknown possibility. This is not rational, but it is real. You tolerate certain suffering because uncertain improvement seems more threatening. You stay in the prison you know because the freedom you do not know feels more dangerous than the captivity you have normalized. Fear of being alone traps them. You stay in relationships that damage you because the alternative is solitude. And you've been taught that solitude is suffering, that being alone is failure, that not having someone is worse than having someone who hurts you. This belief keeps millions of people trapped with partners who do not deserve their presence, keeps them tolerating treatment they should reject, keeps them choosing bad company over their own company because they have never learned that their own company is enough. Fear of starting over immobilizes them. You have invested time, energy, years. The thought of starting over feels like admitting that investment was wasted. So you stay. You continue investing in something that is not working. You add more time to a situation that is not improving. The economists call this the sunk cost fallacy. You call it loyalty, but it is neither loyalty nor rationality. It is fear of starting over disguised as commitment. Fear of what others will think controls them. You worry about how leaving will look, what people will say, how you will be judged. You stay in situations that destroy you privately to maintain an image publicly. Your reputation with others matters more than your relationship with yourself. Their judgment of your leaving matters more than your experience of staying. This is external validation seeking in its most destructive form. staying in situations that damage you because leaving might be criticized. That is the key. Every reason you cannot walk away is fear dressed in different clothing. Fear of the unknown, fear of solitude, fear of starting over, fear of judgment. Identify which fear holds you. Name it specifically, because what you name, you can address. What remains vague continues to control. It is not about leaving everything. It is not about becoming someone who abandons commitments at the first discomfort. It is about having the capability to leave, the option to exit, the power that comes from knowing you could walk away if the situation warranted it. Some situations warrant staying. Some relationships deserve commitment. But that commitment should be choice, not captivity. That staying should be decision, not default. And you cannot choose to stay if you cannot choose to leave. Here is how to build walkaway readiness. The first component is financial. We discussed this. Money in reserve, multiple income sources, reduced expenses, the practical ability to survive without any single source of income. Without this foundation, walkaway capability remains theoretical. You cannot leave if leaving means financial destruction. Build the financial base that makes walking away economically survivable. The second component is emotional. We discussed this too. The ability to be alone without suffering. Internal validation that does not require external input. Emotional self-sufficiency that does not depend on any particular person or situation. Without this foundation, walkaway capability remains blocked by fear. You cannot leave if leaving means emotional devastation. Build the emotional resilience that makes walking away psychologically survivable. The third component is identity independence. Your sense of who you are must not be defined by any single relationship, role, or situation. If your identity is your job, you cannot leave your job without losing yourself. If your identity is your relationship, you cannot leave your relationship without losing yourself. If your identity is any external circumstance, you cannot leave that circumstance without existential crisis. Build an identity that transcends any particular situation. That remains stable regardless of what you leave or what leaves you. The fourth component is practical preparation. Skills that create options. Networks that provide opportunities. Knowledge of alternatives. The practical awareness that other possibilities exist and the practical capability to pursue them. Without this preparation, walkaway capability remains abstract. You know you should leave, but do not know where to go. Build the practical readiness that makes walking away lead somewhere instead of nowhere. You have a choice. Continue neglecting walkaway readiness and remain trapped by your inability to exit, or start building each component deliberately and discover power you have never possessed. The building takes time. The readiness does not arrive overnight. But every day you work on it, your capability increases. Your options expand. Your leverage grows. And eventually, you reach the point where walking away is genuinely possible, where staying is genuinely choice, where your presence is genuinely earned. Here is what happens when you can walk away. First, others treat you differently. Not because you threaten to leave, not because you announce your capability, simply because the energy shifts. People sense when someone is trapped and when someone is free. They sense when they must earn your presence and when your presence is guaranteed regardless of their behavior. When you can walk away, that energy communicates itself, and others respond accordingly. Second, you treat yourself differently. Staying becomes choice instead of captivity. Every day you remain in a situation becomes a day you chose to remain, not a day you were forced to endure. This changes everything about how you experience the situation. Even difficult circumstances become tolerable when they are chosen. Even challenging relationships become manageable when they are selected. The power of choice transforms the experience of staying. Third, your standards rise. When you can leave situations that violate your standards, you stop tolerating violations. When you can walk away from treatment that diminishes you, you stop accepting diminishment. Your standards become real instead of aspirational, enforced instead of theoretical. Because you have the capability to enforce them, you have the option to exit anything that falls below them. And that option makes the standards meaningful. That is the key. Walk-away capability makes everything else real. All the standards you want to set, all the boundaries you want to enforce, all the treatment you refuse to accept. None of it means anything if you cannot leave when those standards, boundaries, and limits are violated. The capability to walk away is what makes your standards matter. What makes your boundaries real? What makes your self-respect enforceable? It is not about walking away from everything. Most situations will not require exit. Most relationships will not warrant leaving. The point is not frequent departure. The point is genuine capability. Knowing you could leave if necessary. Knowing you are staying because you choose to, not because you must. That knowledge transforms every situation you are in, even the ones you never leave. Consider this truth. The person who cannot walk away has no negotiating power. In any disagreement, any conflict, any difference of perspective, the person who must stay has already lost. They must compromise. They must accommodate. They must accept whatever terms the other party offers because the alternative is unthinkable. But the person who can walk away enters every negotiation from strength. They can decline terms that do not serve them. They can refuse accommodation that violates their interests. They can walk away if no acceptable agreement emerges. That capability changes every negotiation, every conflict, every relationship. Here is the protocol for building walkaway capability. Assess your current readiness honestly. Could you leave your job tomorrow if it became intolerable? Could you exit your relationship if it violated your non-negotiables? Could you walk away from your current circumstances if they became unacceptable? If the answer is no, identify specifically what prevents you. Financial dependency, emotional dependency, identity dependency, practical unpreparedness. Name the barriers precisely. Then address each barrier systematically. The financial barrier through saving, earning, reducing expenses. The emotional barrier through building solitude tolerance, internal validation, emotional self-sufficiency. The identity barrier through building a sense of self that transcends any particular situation. The practical barrier through developing skills, networks, knowledge of alternatives. Each barrier addressed increases your capability. Each dependency reduced increases your freedom. Each fear confronted increases your power. Set a timeline for walkaway readiness. Not leaving. Readiness. The capability to leave if necessary. 6 months. 12 months. Whatever timeline is realistic for your situation. Work toward that readiness consistently, because readiness changes everything even if you never exercise it. Readiness creates options. Options create power. Power creates the freedom that makes your life genuinely yours. You learn that walking away is your greatest power. You have learned 9 truths across 9 chapters. 9 ways that dependency destroys you. 9 ways that independence frees you. But learning is not becoming. Understanding is not transforming. The question now is not what you know. The question is who you will become. Chapter 10. Becoming completely unstoppable. You have learned 9 truths. 9 chapters of understanding. 9 ways that needing others has imprisoned you, and 9 ways that not needing them can free you. But here is what you must understand now. Learning is not transformation. Understanding is not becoming. You can memorize every principle in this book and remain exactly as dependent as you were when you started. Because information does not change you. Only integration changes you. Only implementation transforms you. Only becoming someone different makes you different. And that is what this final chapter is about. Not learning one more thing. Becoming someone new. Someone who does not need anyone. Someone who cannot be stopped. Here is what you need to understand. The final integration of independence into identity happens when not needing others stops being effort and becomes nature. When you no longer decide to be independent. When independence is simply who you are. When the principles we have discussed are not things you practice, but things you embody. That is the transformation point. That is when everything changes. That is when you become unstoppable. That is the key. Independence is no longer something you do. Independence is who you are. You do not decide each day to stop seeking validation. You simply are someone who does not seek it. You do not remind yourself to stop outsourcing emotions. You simply are someone who generates emotions internally. You do not force yourself to be comfortable alone. You simply are someone who thrives in solitude. The behavior flows from identity, not from effort, not from discipline, from identity. Think about the person you want to become, the completely independent version of yourself, the version who does not need approval, who does not need validation, who does not need anyone's presence to feel complete. What does that person do daily? How does that person respond to rejection? How does that person handle solitude? How does that person make decisions? You know the answers. You have learned them across 9 chapters. The question is whether you will become that person or just admire that person from a distance. You have a choice. Continue admiring independence from the prison of dependency, or start the transformation that makes independence your identity. One path is comfortable. It requires no change, just continued learning without implementation, just understanding without becoming. The other path is uncomfortable. It requires daily action that contradicts your conditioning, daily choices that defy your programming, daily transformation that reshapes who you are. Choose now, because the choice determines everything. Here is how the transformation happens. First, you install new defaults through consistent action. Your current defaults are dependency. Seeking approval is default. Outsourcing emotions is default. Fearing solitude is default. Needing validation is default. These defaults were installed through years of repetition. They will not be uninstalled through understanding. They will only be uninstalled through new repetition, through consistent action that creates new patterns, through daily choices that install new defaults over time. Every time you catch yourself seeking approval and choose not to seek it, you weaken the old default and strengthen the new one. Every time you notice yourself outsourcing an emotion and choose to generate it internally instead, you rewire the pattern. Every time you feel the fear of solitude and choose to embrace solitude anyway, you build new capacity. The transformation is not dramatic. It is not sudden. It is the accumulation of thousands of small choices that gradually shift who you are. That is the key. You become someone who does not need others by repeatedly acting like someone who does not need others until the acting becomes being, until the practice becomes identity, until the effort becomes effortless. This is not pretending. This is installing. You are not faking independence. You are building it. One choice at a time. One day at a time. One moment at a time. Second, you protect the transformation through environmental design. You cannot become independent in an environment designed to keep you dependent. You cannot stop seeking validation while surrounded by people who punish you for not seeking it. You cannot embrace solitude while embedded in systems that demand constant connection. Your environment must support your transformation, or your environment will sabotage it. Audit your surroundings. Which relationships reward your dependency? Which situations punish your independence? Which environments make it harder to become who you need to become? You may need to distance from some people, exit some situations, change some environments, not from hatred, from necessity, from recognition that who you spend time with shapes who you become. And you cannot become independent while embedded in dependency-reinforcing systems. Third, you maintain vigilance against regression. The pull toward dependency is strong. The conditioning is deep. The programming has been running for decades. Even after significant transformation, the old patterns will attempt to reassert themselves. Stress will trigger old defaults. Difficulty will activate old programming. You will find yourself seeking approval you no longer need, outsourcing emotions you can now generate, fearing solitude you have learned to embrace. This is not failure. This is mechanics. The old patterns do not disappear. They become dormant, and vigilance keeps them dormant. You have a choice. Build the new identity and then stop maintaining it, watching it erode back to dependency. Or build the new identity and maintain it permanently through ongoing vigilance and practice. Transformation is not a destination you arrive at and then stop traveling. Transformation is a direction you maintain indefinitely. The maintenance is lighter than the building, but the maintenance is still required. Forever. Here is what the daily practice looks like. Morning awareness. Before you engage with the world, you remind yourself who you are becoming. Someone who does not need approval. Someone who generates emotions internally. Someone who thrives in solitude. Someone who validates themselves. Someone who can walk away from anything. This reminder is not affirmation. It is orientation, setting your direction before circumstances try to redirect you. Throughout the day, you catch default behaviors. You notice when you are about to seek approval and choose differently. You notice when you are outsourcing an emotion and reclaim it. You notice when you are performing for validation and stop performing. You notice when fear of solitude or rejection is driving behavior and choose courage instead. Each catch is a repetition. Each different choice is a rewiring. The catches become easier. The choices become more natural. The defaults begin to shift. Evening review. Before sleep, you assess. Where did you succeed in acting from independence today? Where did you fall back into dependency? What triggered the regression? What do you do differently tomorrow? This review is not judgment. It is calibration. Adjusting your approach based on actual experience. Learning what works and what is not. Refining your transformation process through honest assessment. That is the key. Daily practice is what transforms understanding into identity. Without the practice, the learning remains theoretical. With the practice, the learning becomes you. The practice is not optional. The practice is the transformation. Everything else is just preparation for the practice. Here is what happens when the transformation completes. You stop being stoppable, not because obstacles disappear, not because difficulty vanishes, not because life becomes easy, because nothing external can control you anymore. No one can manipulate you through approval or disapproval because you do not need either. No one can destabilize you through presence or absence because you are stable alone. No one can leverage your need against you because you have no need to leverage. You become unstoppable because the handles others use to control you no longer exist. Consider what this means practically. Someone criticizes you. Before, this would destabilize you, shake your confidence, send you seeking validation to repair the damage. Now, you evaluate the criticism on its merits. You consider whether it is accurate. You adjust if adjustment is warranted, but your core remains stable. Your worth remains intact. The criticism is information, not devastation. You are unstoppable because criticism cannot stop you. Someone rejects you. Before, this would wound you, create fear, trigger desperate attempts to regain approval. Now, you accept the rejection as information about compatibility. You wish them well. You continue moving. Your trajectory is not altered by their rejection. Your sense of worth is not diminished by their disapproval. You are unstoppable because rejection cannot stop you. Circumstances become difficult. Before, this would destabilize you emotionally. You would outsource your state to the circumstances. Bad situation equals bad emotions. Now, you generate your emotional state internally regardless of external circumstances. Difficult situations receive your best response, not your worst reaction. You are unstoppable because circumstances cannot stop you. You face solitude. Before, this would terrify you, drive you toward any company, even bad company, just to avoid being alone. Now, you embrace solitude as opportunity, as the space where clarity emerges and strength consolidates. You are unstoppable because solitude cannot stop you. The thing you once feared has become a source of power. That is the key. When nothing external can stop you, you become unstoppable. Not through force, not through aggression, through independence. Through the removal of every handle others could use to control, manipulate, or influence you against your interests. You become frictionless. Others cannot grip you, cannot steer you, cannot stop you, because you do not need anything they have badly enough to be stopped by its withholding. It is not about becoming cold. It is not about disconnecting from humanity. It is about connecting from strength instead of weakness. About having relationships because you choose them, not because you need them. About engaging with the world from completeness instead of seeking completion from a world. The independent person is not less connected. They are more connected because their connections are genuine, chosen, free, not desperate grasping at anyone who might temporarily fill the void. Here is the final truth. You were born complete. Then you were taught that you were incomplete, that you needed others to be whole, that you required approval to have worth, that you must seek validation to be valuable. But that teaching was wrong. It was programming that served others, not truth that served you. And everything we have discussed in this audiobook has been about uninstalling that false programming, returning you to the completeness you were born with, the completeness that was trained out of you, the completeness that makes you need no one. You are complete. You do not need anyone's approval to be worthy. You do not need anyone's validation to be valuable. You do not need anyone's presence to be whole. These are not affirmations. These are facts that have been obscured by programming. And the work of this audiobook has been clearing away that programming so the facts can be seen, so the truth can be lived, so you can become who you actually are instead of who you were trained to be. You have a choice. Return to the programming. Return to the dependency. Return to the prison that feels familiar because you have lived there so long. Or step out, permanently, into independence that feels unfamiliar but is actually more natural than anything you have experienced. Into completeness that was always yours but was hidden by false beliefs. Into power that was always available but was blocked by manufactured need. The choice is yours. It has always been yours. No one is coming to make it for you. No one is coming to transform you. No one is coming to build your independence. That is the point. You do not need anyone, not even to become someone who does not need anyone. You need only yourself, and yourself has always been enough. Walk alone. Move silent. Become unstoppable, not because others are not valuable. They are. Not because connection is not meaningful. It is. But because you're walking, you're moving, your becoming does not depend on anyone else. It depends only on you. And you are enough. You have always been enough. You will always be enough. Starting now, you listen to 10 chapters, 10 truths, 10 ways to build the independence that makes you unstoppable. You learned that needing people is a prison you built with borrowed beliefs. You learned that loneliness is strength, not suffering. You also discovered how to stop outsourcing your emotional state to people who don't deserve that power. You learned to act in silence. You learned that relationships improve when neediness disappears. You learned to eliminate your addiction to validation, and also that financial independence creates emotional independence. You learned that walking away is your greatest power, and you learned how to become completely, totally, and unshakably unstoppable. But here's the truth. Learning is not transformation. Listening is not changing. Understanding is not implementing. Tomorrow morning, you will wake up and face the same world that taught you to need people. The same relationships that trained you to seek approval. The same situations that rewarded your dependence. And you will have a choice. Go back to prison, or walk out free. Continue needing people, or start being independent. Continue being controllable, or become unstoppable. The knowledge is in your head. The choice is in your hands. No one will come to save you. No one will come to implement these lessons for you or build your independence. That is the point. You do not need anyone, not even to transform. You need only yourself, and yourself is enough. Walk alone. Move silent. Become unstoppable. Starting now.